So I'm going to start by saying that being 68 years of age, I oftentimes do things that may not be the smartest. And one of the things I did yesterday was play basketball due to the influence of my bald-headed chief of staff, Dylan Lazovich, and my legislative director, Justin Folsom, who I have no comments for. And quite frankly, so if I shed a tear while I'm up here today, it won't be because I'm emotional, it's because my back is killing me right now, okay? Look, I've seen a number of these exit speeches. To be honest with you, they remind me of a bit of an obituary. And the truth is this is the end of this moment in time. This last 18 years that I've spent in the United States Senate. But the truth is there's been other periods of time very similar to that throughout my life. When I went to high school, grade school and high school and college, for example, about an 18-year period. When that time period was over with, we moved on. My wife Sharon and I cut meat for almost exactly 18 years on the farm, a custom butcher shop. When we shut that down, when I got in the state legislature, that period of time in our lives was over. And now my time in the Senate is over. By the way, every one of those time periods were wrapped around by my family and I, Charlotte and I in particular, doing production agriculture on the family farm. Now, I will tell you that I expected to serve 12 years in this body when I got here. I jumped in feet first, but I realized in short order that this is a seniority-driven body, that the longer you're here, the more ability you have to get done for your state and your country. And I very much appreciate the time that Montanans have allowed me to serve as their representative in the United States Senate. In the end, I was able to chair two major committees that have an incredibly large, in fact, the biggest impact on our United States' budget. The Senate Appropriations Defense Committee, Subcommittee, and the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. These are the two largest agencies from a funding standpoint in the United States Senate. In those committees in the United States Senate, as a whole, I've been able to do some good things, some long-lasting things for Montana and the United States of America. And I want to visit for a moment about why I was deemed one of the most effective senators by a nonpartisan group from a policy perspective. I am the product of my grandparents, Fred and Christine Pearson, both who were homesteaders in north central Montana. My grandfather, Fred Pearson, passed away when I was 6 years old, so my memories of him are dim. But I do remember him smoking cigars, white owls and Roytans, a family tradition. And I remember him being pretty deaf. In fact, as a young kid, probably 5 years old, I remember riding in his 53 Chevy pickup with a 235-6 in it, and the motor just screaming before he shifted gears, because he was deaf and hearing aids obviously didn't work so good in those years. He also was missing an index finger on his hand. But what I found out since his passing is that he loved to work and was literally outworked by no one. Whether it was pitching bundles into a threshing machine or picking rock, this is a man who knew how to work, and he knew how to work hard. Then there was my grandmother, Christine Pearson, who immigrated from Sweden to this country when she was 16 years of age and never went back to Sweden. She passed when I was 16 years old. My memories are clear of her. She believed in strong public education. In fact, all three of her daughters were teachers. She talked politics with my mother regularly and always had a copy of The Nation on her end table. My parents, Dave and Helen Tester, who were socially liberal and fiscally conservative. They were FDR Democrats. They were children of the 1930s oppression. They were both alive when I started my state legislative endeavor, and my mother was alive when I started my endeavors in the United States Senate. David O. Tester, my father, was born in Utah, the son of a miner and a sheep herder. He was raised in the Wasatch Mountains by Salt Lake City. He met my mother after the CCCs brought him to Montana. He was a horseman. He knew horses from the inside out. He knew how they thought, and he knew how to train them. He loved the outdoors, And he said the finest cathedral he ever saw was God's cathedral in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. He had a fiery but forgiving personality. In that vein, he was somewhat like John McCain. In 1 minute, he would be mad as hell at you, and shortly thereafter, he had forgotten all about it, and he was your friend. He enjoyed life and always said, life ain't worth living if you can't have fun. He was a hard-working, free spirit. Helen M. Tester, my mother, was the daughter of homesteaders. She was raised on the farm that Charla and I operate today. She loved the land, and she loved farming. She, like her dad, would taste the soil and tell you if it was ready to plant. She also loved politics. Absolutely loved John Kennedy and the Kennedy family. In fact, she was here for my first swearing in and said it was the greatest day of her life. Of course, she was proud of my swearing in, but she also got to meet Ted and Ethel Kennedy. She was proud of her 3 boys and took a backseat to no one when it came to being smart and savvy. She also believed strongly in public education. So what did these ancestors instill in me? They instilled Montana values, like telling the truth, like the word is your bond, like your handshake means something, and that you respect people and absolutely never sass your elders. But most importantly, they taught me that hard work creates luck, and hard work is essential for success. And finally, from a governmental ag perspective, they told me don't depend on farm subsidies to cash flow the farm, and don't borrow money. If you don't have the money, don't buy it. My 2 older brothers, and I emphasize older, Dave and Bob. Dave is a retired veterinarian. Bob is a retired chief master sergeant. They've taught me by example to always work to make your community a better place. They both, by the way, are political animals, even though most of the time they don't care to admit it. My wife, Charla, of 47 years, my soulmate, put up with me, kept me grounded, whether it was teaching or processing meat or farming. We took the farm over when I was 21 years of age and Charla was 19. For the first basic 20 years of our marriage, we spent 180 days a year processing beef and pork. That meant every other day of the year, our workplace put us across from one another with knives, very sharp knives in our hands. That taught us to choose our arguments carefully. She's always been my right-hand man, or my right-hand person. Charla has always been there, whether it was working together to seed or to hay or to harvest or even butcher a beef in miserably cold weather. And in the end, she always supported my many public service endeavors, even when she really didn't think it was a good idea. Our kids, Christine, Sean, and then later Melody, very proud of what they've done and the causes they've advocated for. Christine in healthcare, and Sean in fixing up classic cars, Melody in education. All 3 of them work every day to make their community a better place. They're not coffee drinkers and bitchers, they're doers. And then there's my public service influences. I guess I first got started when I was elected student body president in high school. Then after college, I spent the next 20 years doing community service before I got elected to the state legislature. Those boards included the Soil Conservation Board in Big Sandy, the Big Sandy School Board, which was the hardest public service job I ever had, the Choteau County Farm Service Agency, the Executive Board of the International Organic Certification Association, and then the Montana State Legislature, which was the funnest job I ever had. If not for term limits, I'd probably still endeavor to be a state legislator. I had my share of successes and failures, but all these commitments taught me, most importantly, that you have 2 ears and you have 1 mouth acting accordingly. You never are right all the time, and you're never wrong all the time. So listen to what people are saying. These public influences taught me how to get stuff done. In other words, how to go to work and be a workhorse, not a show horse. Then there were influences outside of politics. Of course, our family farm. It didn't take long for me to understand that democracies don't work when you have hungry people. And over the 47 years that Charlotte and I have been on the farm, we've witnessed the challenges of consolidation, in land and markets and inputs, and an increased dependence by farmers on government subsidies. In public education, the great foundation of our democracy, the great equalizer, the ability for us to have the American dream, taught me a lot, both as a student and as a teacher. But it was what the teachers taught me. I learned so much from them. The ones I liked, I learned a lot from. And in retrospect, the ones I didn't like, I probably learned more from. If you want to know what's wrong with public education today, you have to look no further than what we're paying our teachers. And infrastructure, something that we use every day, it is the foundation of our economy. For those folks that brought themselves up on their bootstraps, their boots would have no straps without good infrastructure. Valuing our natural resources, especially water. Water needs to be respected, not abused. The well on Charlotte and my farm is 450 feet deep, and it's salt water. It's not drinkable. So good water is scarce, so we ought to work to protect it because water is life. The importance of a strong, accountable military and the folks who serve to deter our enemies. I was a first grader during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember the teacher talking about the bomb shelters and where they were, and instructing us to get under our desk if we were attacked. As a 6-year-old kid, that kind of stuff stays with you. And then there was influence from the folks, the giants that I served with. Of course, Robert C. Byrd, who always called me the mountain man. Now, Robert C. Byrd was not at the top of his game when I came here, but he was still pretty damn good, I will tell you that, and did some amazing things during the years I served with him. There was Teddy Kennedy, the perpetual worker, the guy who went to Montana to campaign for John Kennedy, and during the bucking horse sale in Miles City walked up to the crow's nest and said, "Could you announce that I'm here and that John Kennedy's running for president?" The announcer said, "The only way we get the name Kennedy announced here is if you get on the back of one of those horses." And he did it. Danny Inouye, true American hero. I can't say enough about this dude. He was the best. And I got to play taps at his funeral at the Punch Bowl, something that I will never forget as long as I'm alive. Johnny Isakson, the senator from Georgia, the Vets chair, a more quality man you'll never, ever meet. This guy had my back, even when times were tough. He didn't go run to the press and trash me. He had my back, and he explained what was going on. I will be eternally grateful to Johnny Isakson. Richard Shelby, the character, the approach chair who understood how to get things done in the United States Senate. An amazing guy, and when he talked with that southern drawl, it was good that you paid attention because he had information to relay that would be helpful. And then finally, Jay Rockefeller, the man who stood at this desk right here, who the first time I saw him when I got to Washington, D.C., walked up to me, big man, put his arm around me. I felt like a midget. And he said, "You know, John, we started out in different spots, but we ended up in the same place." No truer statement could ever be said. Which leads me to some of my accomplishments. Veterans mileage reimbursement was the first bill of significance that I got passed, and I got passed because Robert C. Byrd helped me get it passed. And every disabled veteran in this country got a benefit from that mileage reimbursement that was long overdue to be increased. And then we did other bills in the veterans space. John Scott Hannon mental health care bill, absolutely critically important for our veterans. The Deborah Sansom women health care bill, the largest growing group of people in our VA is women. Getting that done was important. And the last major VA bill, and we had many in between, was the PACT Act. Veterans, veterans, veterans. They all got together. They made this the highest priority. Some of you can remember the veterans being on the swamp in July, hotter than hot. And we got it passed because of their influence. Democracy worked. This resulted in 1 million Americans and 35,000 Montanans being screened. In the area of conservation, you know, I believe in gold mining, but mining gold on the doorstep of Yellowstone National Park isn't the place to do it. there was a proposal to do that. We got it stopped. And we also got the Rocky Mountain Front and the North Fork watershed protected for generations. And we got the Land and Water Conservation Fund fully funded, our best conservation tool in this country. In banking, for community banks and credit unions, access to capital for rural America is critically important, and they're the ones that do it. We got the regulations to fit the risk. In infrastructure, it's been talked about by a number of times, by a number of people who are no longer going to be in this body next year. But I got to serve with 10 senators. Some I knew pretty well, others I didn't know that well. And I can tell you, after those negotiations for the infrastructure bill, which resulted in the largest investment in infrastructure since the year I was born, in the middle of the Eisenhower administration, you wouldn't have known which one of us was a Democrat and which one of us was a Republican. I remember arguing with Warner and Shaheen and agreeing with Cassidy and Romney. I mean, I'm telling you, when we got done, we had turned everything inside out and upside down, and it ended up with roads and bridges and water and broadband, electric transmission, rails, the list goes on. It was an incredible experience, opportunity, and something that I will cherish after I leave this body. There was a CHIPS and Science Act. You know, we've been outsourcing jobs forever, but we finally passed a bill that will start bringing those jobs back home. That's what the CHIPS and Science Act did. And it was also result in a tech hub for Montana, which will allow our private sector and our university system in Montana to be an important leader when it comes to tech. And for our Native Americans, and we cannot forget about our Native Americans, we have trust responsibilities to them that are exclusive to them. So when it came to water settlements and health care and law enforcement and sovereignty and self-determination, I made it a high priority. And also we ended up getting the Little Shell Tribe recognized, something that they had worked on for literally generation after generation after generation. Now, I can't talk enough about the important work. I took credit for all this. But the senators sitting on this floor know that the staffs are the one that really do the work. And my DC staff was outstanding, and it is outstanding. And I appreciate them a lot. And I also appreciate the work of my state staff who did constituency work. I think some of the best in the country. And I appreciate them. And I'd ask for unanimous consent that the names of those folks be put in the record.
Without objection.
I also want to thank the committee staff, especially all the committee staff, but especially the Vets Committee staff and the staff on the Defense Committee, Subcommittee on Appropriations. These guys are the energy that keeps the wheels of democracy moving, and I would ask unanimous consent to put their names in the record.
Without objection.
So you may ask, what do I see as my greatest accomplishment? I see my greatest accomplishment as being a United States Senator as a citizen legislator. Having a real full-time job outside this body, in my case, as a farmer. This is what our forefathers had in mind. Trips home every weekend. Not only preparing the seed bed and seeding till sometimes 3 in the morning, or haying, plowing down peas, getting the equipment ready, but also traveling the state, having meetings with my constituents, doing my job as a senator. I loved every minute of it, most days. I was asked to go on Codels and almost always declined because I went on a Codel every weekend back to Montana. Moving forward, I'd ask this body to please focus on public education. It is the great equalizer. It's the foundation for our democracy and our economy. Continue to work for health care that everybody can afford when they need it. In family farm agriculture, work to put more competition in the marketplace. This is ultimately what will result in less reliance on farm subsidies. Work for a fair tax code. Work for equity. Stop these damn carve-outs of our tax code. Continue to address the funding challenges in defense, in climate, in hunger, education and housing. And capitalism works if there's competition. So address the consolidation the best you can in agriculture, energy, and finance. And work to grow the middle class. The problems with income disparity are absolutely real. Address the defense budget in ways that keeps us safe while holding our military and our contractors accountable. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, those threats are real. They're doing some god-awful stuff. And we need to make sure that we have a military that will deter and hopefully never have to use it. But if we do, we win. Put some sideboards on AI, maintaining creativity and protecting privacy and freedom while stopping AI's potential to ruin humanity. And last and certainly not least, and please listen to me, I've just been through this meat grinder. We need to do some campaign finance reform. Because of our campaign finance system in this country today, we have more division than ever. We are more paralyzed as a body to do policy than we ever have before. Campaign finance reform would be good for democracy. And let me tell you something, it has to be solved with bipartisan solutions. It needs to happen. One of the frustrating things that happened was our conservative Supreme Court made the finance rules, whether it's Citizens United or McCutcheon or whatever it is. I despise these rules. I think they're horrible. I think it allows candidates to stay underground and not go out and talk to people. But I'll follow the rules, and I'll go by their rules. And then I get criticized by the same people who voted to put those folks on the Supreme Court. Crazy. Now for the staffs that we take for granted. I want to thank the folks that are on the rostrum. Whether it's a parliamentarian, the bill clerks, the reading clerks, did I forget anybody? The truth is the work you guys do is absolutely amazing, and sometimes way, 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 way too late at night. The Sergeant at Arms and the employees under you, thank you very much for keeping us safe in this building. And for the policemen out on the street, man, I've never been around a police department that does a job as well as them. To the cloakrooms, thank you for keeping us on task. Some things we don't think about, like the wood shop and the metal shop and the painters, these folks are artisans. They do amazing work. You don't think about it, but these chairs, they're hand-built. Most of the furniture we have in our office is hand-built by some of the best people, woodworkers, metal workers, the painters you can imagine. To the janitors, thank you very much for keeping this place clean. You guys are all the lubricant to keep this place operating. And look, I spent 2 days a week for 18 years on airplanes. I was served by United and Delta, so I'm going to thank them too. And the press, my God, the press. Look, your job is to hold us accountable. Do it. And if any of these folks don't like it, and occasionally they won't, just remember that democracy and accountability go hand in hand. You need to be able to do your job. And thank you for doing the job you're doing. As I close, I would say this democracy has resulted in the greatest country that's ever existed. It is because of our forefathers' ability to compromise and think clearly about the challenges ahead and set the rules that would address these challenges. The USA exists as the greatest country ever to exist because of previous generations and senators and public officials exhibiting the ability to make sound decisions based on facts and reality, not decisions promoting political power, but realistic decisions promoting a strong future for our country and for future generations. To say that I'm worried about this country's ability to maintain the strongest economy and the most powerful military in the world would be an understatement. However, I know that a majority of people that serve in this U.S. Senate today are real legislators who want to do real legislating. To those senators, you need to make sure your voices are a majority of this body. If not, this country will change in a way that our children will not thank us for. God bless you all, and tally ho.